Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for my final thoughts on Advanced Salvo, or maybe more correctly I should say on Salvo and all the various incarnations it's been through and all the expansions that it has managed to go through, because at its core you have this wonderful, wonderful system, which I've made no secret of the fact I really, really like it. And I think that came through in my introductory video and also in my playthrough. So, really, this is just going to be me offering my last thoughts and sum up on why I like the game system so much and what it does well. So, for me, the great selling point of the basic Salvo system is that it is simple, it plays quickly, it gives you a believable narrative, and ships are modelled really quite well. There are a few things you might quibble with, and it would be dishonest of me to say that there haven't been a few bits in this game that have made me raise my eyebrows a little bit. But a lot of those tend to be along the fault lines of debatable points of vessel performance. Sometimes you get variances between a vessel's, we'll call it their published capability, and what they actually achieved and how the game addresses that. I mean, one example is the Bismarck. I think is sold slightly short on her speed in this game. But then you could equally and very validly counter that by saying that, well, this game deals in units of speed, partly to see whether vessels can outrun and outmaneuver each other, but also as a general record of how much damage it takes to convincingly reduce their speed. So looking at it from that angle, some of the ratings in this game make more sense. But really, rabbit holes like that are not worth disappearing down, I feel, with Salvo. Because, I mean, look at it. You've seen in the previous videos what an incredibly short affair the rule book is. What surprises me is just how much detail you get in the modelling of individual ships for a game this short. That kind of data would not disgrace a detailed tabletop miniatures war game, and yet here it is in this incredibly simple package that not only gives you ages of rewarding one player play, but can be adapted for two player, and one that can support. My personal feeling was up to four ships aside maximum, but you could accommodate more if you had the brain power and the willingness to, and maybe an opponent to help deal with some of the admin. And in a very real sense, I think the game's many expansions, from its humble beginnings as a mere postcard in 2007, 2008, to its expansion into Advanced Salvo, and then the further growth into Mediterranean and Pacific Salvo, where you see a greatly increased number of ships and more scenarios. To, of course, you now have the various huge bits and pieces that make up Great War Salvo. This is a popular game system, and it's a game system that proves its versatility because, of course, naval combat in this era, even if you focus only on the gun-based surface combat as Salvo does, the variances you get between how a ship would perform during the Great War and how it would perform in the Second World War are beautifully captured. Now, I find that with Great War Salvo, you get a lot more complexity. There's extra rules packed in, but without breaking the elegance of the system, they give you so much more, and they also accurately model a lot of the problems and issues that First World War navies grappled with and then solved and then capitalized on in the Second World War. So if you play a round of Great War Salvo and then follow it up an hour later with Advanced Salvo, you'd almost feel you're playing an easier game with fewer rules to remember in Advanced Salvo, and there's good reasons for that. Fire control had advanced, so the rules for Advanced Salvo and the Second World War scenarios in that have much simpler fire control rules, but it very cleverly reflects the fact. I mean, I don't know whether it was just the way things were that as Gary Graeber developed this line of games, by the time he got on to Great War Salvo, he thought of more optional rules. But when you play the two close to each other, you find that it's a much more streamlined affair in World War Two than it is in World War One. But then that's right, because First World War gunnery was it was quite amateurish when you compare it to Second World War gunnery. Some principles remain the same, I would say the tech that supported them changed, and the game very beautifully reflects that as is. So that's one particular strand which this game does very well. It does model a lot of other strands very well too. I think that when you look at the ships, even if you just study the counters, it's a great summary of vessel strengths and weaknesses. And this is a theme I may return to in a future video, maybe sooner than any of us think, but that's another video for another time. So the way vessel maneuverability and speed is modelled, armour and protection, flotation, all these things are covered. For a short, quick playing, really simple game, there is evidence within the counters, the rules and the gameplay that the designer has very, very carefully considered all the aspects of naval warfare. And while some of his conclusions, as ever, there's a risk with these things, may not be to everyone's taste, I don't think it can be denied that a lot of careful consideration went into this. And the other good thing I want to say about the game system is the way that the quality of the components has come on by leaps and bounds. And nowhere is this better reflected than in the quality of the ship counters. So, of course, as I said in my first video, I sadly no longer have it, but the colour postcard in the late 2000s, pre-2010, was my first taste of this system. And it was rapidly followed by my purchase of Advanced Salvo, where the ship counters look like this. And this was just a cardboard insert with the rule book. And you see it's flimsy cardboard. The vessel graphics are incredibly basic. You know, the data's all there. And it's not eye candy, but it tells you everything you need to know, including a very basic, oh, hang on, let's get that centered, a very basic layout of the ship. Now, compare this with what you get in Great War Salvo and its various expansions. Look at that. Quality cardboard, summary of a game turn with all the tables that you need and the optional rules included. You get 2 or 3 copies of these in some sets to account for player numbers. And just look at that. Still very basic compared to some war games out there, but given that you're paying, or at least at the time I purchased these, less than £10 for every sub-game and expansion, that, on that kind of cardboard, is good quality. And not only do you get improvements in the way that the ships are drawn, coloured, and so forth. You know, you've got the nice colourful national flags now, but you get lots of them. And this is particularly true of the Great War. They kept the expansions coming, and they started off with ships that had been available to the Central Powers and the Entente Powers in the Mediterranean. And the North Sea was the first major expansion, which allowed you to, of course, cover the ground of Jutland. Not that you would refight Jutland using this system, but it gave you the option of setting up small actions between every ship that could have had a punch-up. And they don't leave out the minor powers either. I love some of these sheets because everybody gets a chance to participate in some way, shape, or form. I mean, I love that you even have an armed version of the Lusitania down there if you want an armed merchant cruiser wandering around. And it goes on and on and on. And if you go to the Minden Games website, which I put in a link to in my first video, you'll see that the system has been overhauled for advanced Salvo. So, like Great War Salvo, you see they've brought it up to the standard of this title. You now get these sheets of very well printed cardboard ships that you can either cut out, or in my case, what I did was I photocopied them, color photocopied them, fairly laboriously glued them onto a cardboard backing, and made my own ship counters. Now, depending on how good your color copier is, they may lose a bit on the quality, but these are perfectly serviceable. That's just cardboard from the back of a notebook, so incredibly cheap. And if you're willing to put the time and the effort in, you can not only keep these beautiful reference copies, but you can wander around with these, and it's so transportable. I mean, all of my Great War Salvo ships fit into a plastic bag about that big, and I've got them all bagged up by battle cruiser, armored cruiser, light cruiser, battleship, because I'm a bit funny about that sort of thing, but it just helps me. So yes, this is an incredibly versatile game. And you can play it at any level you like. You can single ship actions. You can bring in miniatures. There's just so much it has to offer at an incredibly reasonable price. And there are yet more spin-offs now that I haven't even tried. I believe there's an even simpler version out there now called Panzerschiff, which allows you to play. I think it's a similar system, but it's simplified even further. And I think it allows for larger actions. I really ought to get in gear and get a copy and try it out. So yes, I'm really happy to say that Minden Games is keeping this line going and is continuously upgrading it. So if you go in for Salvo now, you get really, really good options. And I don't think the price has increased massively over the last decade for what you get. Inflation has done its thing, but this game is still incredibly competitive on the price front. If you do decide to go for it, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think this game definitely rewards the investment, and you don't have to get everything in order to play. You can just get one particular set for any, the Great War or the Second World War era. If you just want to try the system out, that it's very easily and cheaply done, and I would strongly, strongly recommend it. Sadly, I've let this game lie fallow for a while. I'm not entirely sure why, but I think I will be breaking it out and chucking it into my work bag more often because it's so portable, so easy to play. You just need a bit of scrap paper, if that. And I've had so much fun with it over the last decade plus that it's more than paid for itself. And I think if you've got any interest at all in gun-based naval warfare, there is no carrier element, of course, and submarines are only very abstractly represented. If you want them to be, they're very much an optional rule. Underwater weapons as a regular feature of battle only appear with light cruisers in this game, and destroyers similarly don't get much of a look in. Light cruisers are the smallest that you get. Battleships are the largest, of course. But I would say go for it. You won't lose anything by trying it out. It's less than the cost of a good evening out at the pub. So it's these days. So and of course the as you'll see from the Minden Games website, there is a downloadable option as well. So you don't even have to order and wait for a hard copy if your local gaming shops don't happen to stock it already. So please do give it a try. I mean, if you already own the game and you've played it a lot, I would love to hear from you and get your thoughts on it. And as always, any comments you'd like to make about what you've seen here, any queries you might have, please do put them in. But I hope that overall this series has been a useful coverage of the Salvo system for you. And if you do try it, I wish you very happy gaming. I'm very confident that you'll like what you get. If you're into this kind of naval warfare and you want something quick but detailed and satisfying that strikes a good balance between those two, I would say Salvo is it. So thank you very much for tuning in. As always, it's fantastic to have your company on these things. I very much look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Thanks again. Bye.